somebody else. Okay, so the question is, why are we skipping levels? This is just for core assignments because the idea behind it is that 6 is important, right? But we want to make sure that if you can do 7, then we assume you can do 6. So we're not going to make you do all 12 as a core assignment. The idea is that you would still, like, in order to open up 7, you got to get through 6. And so if you're getting to 7, then you've already done 6, kind of thing. And so that's why, and this is just a practice. Now, just as a reminder, core assignments are what you need to do 90% of core assignments in order to move forward. Practice and optional assignments, though one says optional and one is practice, are both optional. Practice is kind of our way of like, hey, this is optional, but it would be really beneficial if you did this. Optional is, hey, if you want extended learning, you can jump into optional. But here, this is just a core algo app level 7. That is your core assignment, is that one. These are practice assignments, so you can get up to 12. But the idea is that you would work 1 through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if you wanted to. Yeah. I love that, Corey. No thing is optional. No such thing. Cool. Hopefully, did that answer your question, Mara?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So for the back half, we are going to walk through this. Now, I do want to let you guys know, tomorrow for office hour, I have been instructed that we are just going to be here to do the exam. So Paul and I will be in the office hour, and if there are issues with uploading or any sort of issues, then we will be here and be available during that time, just to kind of like real-time response, if you will. That being said, we still can't give you answers. We still can't give you hints. I have a really strong suspicion that if you're able to do what we're about to do, or at least you can follow a video and understand that, then you should have no issues there. But in case there's any technical issues, that's what the office hour will be tomorrow. On Thursday, we are going to have a career services. We're having a career services day. So this is where CSMs will come in and start talking to you about what does it look like to work with CSMs. CSMs are what we call career service managers. They are the people that is going to help you get connected and get a job. So really good people to know. They're going to help you build your resume, build out your LinkedIn. They're going to do a whole bunch of different things for you. And so they're going to come in and they will talk for the first portion. Now, I've been instructed to ask that if you've not finished your exam, that should be your priority on Thursday, because I was able to kind of push it back a day. What we don't want is you to come there. It'll be recorded, but come there and then, really struggle and not. I can't get you down to Friday unless I can. I will always advocate to push it if you guys need, but Thursday is the best that they compromise that we have right now. And so if you haven't already finished the exam, we would say that don't come to the career services portion, and I'll send out an email and give you the specific times that they'll be here. Don't come to the career services portion. Just focus on the exam. And then we can have breakout rooms to where if you want to work on the exam, and then if you finish it quickly, you can hop in, you can do that as well. So that's just kind of an update for tomorrow and Thursday. Again, tomorrow we're just going to simply be in here. It might be crickets, but you will just be working on your exam, but you still can't work together. We can't give you anything. It's just going to be a time that we are here and we can answer any questions that you have, but I'm not going to be going over material. I'm not going to be, last time we kind of talked, we went through some of the algo. I'm not going to be doing that. It's strictly just for the exam, just to kind of make sure you guys have that. And really, 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 I would encourage you guys, you have to have that to move forward. And though it might be scary, you guys can do it. And especially after today. Cool. Any questions on that? And then I'll get started for the next 55 minutes. Cool. Well, let's jump in to this. Okay. So your exam consists of 7 predict the outcome and 3 functions, right? So I've got some here that are very similar, and some of the wording has changed. Obviously, I have to do that, or else I'm giving you the exam. I can't do that, but they are the same format. I have changed just some numbers and some words. That is it. So if you guys can do this and you can understand it, then you should be able to transfer that to an exam. So we're going to go through these one by one. We're going to do all 10. And I'm just going to walk through the process with you just to kind of explain and make sure. So here we've got 4, and you might have seen in the exam it says var. I put let, same sort of idea. They're doing the same thing. Obviously, we've talked about var and const versus let, or sorry, let and const versus var. We had that discussion. So I'm going to put let. They might say var. It's okay. It's not going to break anything. So here we've got let x equals 3. This is our start, right? This is our stop. X is less than 8. So it's as long as x is less than 8, it's going to stop, or it's going to continue running. And then my for loop, once it meets this condition, it stops. And here's my step. Now, this is something we didn't really talk about, but all this is saying, if I've got x, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. That might be helpful. Is that helpful? Sorry, it wasn't on video. Is that a little bit more helpful to read? Yeah, okay, sorry. Always feel free if you're like, I can't see that, let me know, and then I can try to make it bigger. So what this is doing is this is stopping. And then what this is doing is this is x plus equals 2. So x plus equals 2 is the same thing as saying x equals x plus 2. It's just shorthand. They do the exact same thing. We have minus equals, but just know that this is saying the same thing as this. They're doing the same thing. It's just shorthand for that. So we're going to use our little T diagram to understand and know. I'm going to go yellow. I like that on the background. Cool. So right now, x equals 3. We have x is 3, and this is our var val, and I just do var val because of the same. I'm saying okay. So we're going to come in and we're going to say let x equals 3, and then we're going to have our first check, right? Is x less than 8? Well, it is. Okay, well, what do we need to do? So we're going to console log 3. Then we come up here and we say x plus equals 2. Same as saying x equals x plus 2. So plus equals 2 is x is now 5. Perfect. And then we do our check, right? Is 5 less than 8? Well, it is. Perfect. We come in here and we console log 5. Now, x plus equals 2, x becomes 7. 7 less than 8 it is. We console log x, so we get 7. And then finally, we have x plus equals 2. This is now 9. We do our check. Is 9 less than 8? It's not. So my for loop is done. And so our answer is 3, 5, and 7. I saw that a couple of you guys already put that in chat. Way to go. Any questions on how I got there? Anything not making sense? Put a 1 if you're good to go, and put a nothing if you need me to kind of redo this and walk through it again. Great. Cool. Crushing it. Great. Now we've got the same sort of thing. Here we've got a variable called message, or MSG, which is delicious in food, by the way. Fun fact, Chick-fil-A sandwiches have 55 ingredients, and one of them is MSG, so that's why it's so tasty. Anyways, okay, so we have this variable called MSG, and its value is hello world. Now what we're saying is let I equal 9. Oops, let's change this to x. Sorry, when I was changing some of the stuff, I was doing I. Okay, x equals 9. As long as x is less than message.length plus 2. Now, this is a little bit confusing, but we did talk about it, where strings and arrays share some of the same methods, right? Where I can, in the same way that I can iterate through an array, I can iterate through a string even. So if I said message of 0, it's going to give me H. Message of 1 is going to give me E, and so on and so forth. It also has methods to where I can do dot length, and it's going to give me how many characters are in there. Now, one thing to note. So yes, Delvin, that's what I was just about to say. Exclamation point punctuations count, and spaces count. Spaces will count as 1. because it is a character and it is a space to take up. So even spaces count. Right now we don't have spaces. We're not trying to confuse you guys, but yes, punctuation, everything within your string will count. Spaces, punctuation, all that fun stuff. Okay. And then and then we do x plus equals 2. So let's draw out our T diagram. We've got x is 9. I'm going to do ML for message length. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is my message length. So this right here is 12, right? Because it's message length plus 2. So it's saying as long as 9 is less than 12, we're good to go. And then we have x plus equal 2. So our condition is 9 less than 12. It is. Well, what do? We console log I. Again, that should be x. So that was a trick. You guys would have, if you said 9 and 11, no, because I doesn't exist. Okay, we got to make sure we're referring to the right thing. That was on me. But we're console logging x. X is 9. Perfect. We do x plus equals 2, and x becomes 11. Is 11 less than 12? It is, so we console log it, 11. Great. X plus equals 2. That becomes 13. And then we say, is 13 less than 12? It's not, so my function is done running. Or my for loop is done running. Great. So if you got 9 and 11, then awesome. Way to go. Any questions on this one? Put a 1 in the chat if you're good. Put a 0 if you need me to walk through it again.
Just some clarification for me. When I first saw this, I was confused in the sense that I thought it counted as one message length, in the sense that whenever we saw the other ones, they were separated by commas and they had quotes, right? So this is a single quote, right? So is that the difference, that it counts every single letter?
It's because this is a string. So remember the type that we have. So see how it says property string here? Remember the types where we have the primitive data types, we have a string, we have a number, and we have a Boolean, and then our composites are arrays or dictionaries or tuples. Well, an array, when we're doing length, you're right, you are correct. It is based off of the index, right? It's the comma. With a string, it does operate the same way, but different, to where it's just anything between, and this could be double, doesn't matter, as long as it's string declaration. Anything between this, whether it's a punctuation, anything, a space, a string just counts the characters, whereas an array counts the values inside. Separated by that. So that's where they operate and are a little bit different, but the length in itself operates kind of the same way.
Thank you.
Andrew just asked, does it count empty space? Yes, it does. Perfect. Great. Did that answer your question, Lucas?
Yes, thank
you. Yeah, of course. Okay. So let's go to 3. This one's fairly simple. So we got x equals 10. And then we're saying, okay, if x equals 10, it's going to console log x, else it's going to console log goodbye. Great. So I'm already seeing in chat 10 equals 10. So when we get into our conditional statement, it's just going to do this if. And remember, once one of them is true, it is done running. And so we don't even need to worry about anything else. So it would console log x. Great job. Now, trick question, if I did this, what would happen? Oops. Any ideas? Ooh, couple 10s, couple goodbyes. Remember, what this triple equals does will be, it checks not only the value, remember double equals is kind of that lazy check, right? And this, now if I do this, if I do double equals, this will do console log x, right? So if I run this, it's going to give me 10, right? If I do triple equals though, I get goodbye. Whoa. Did anybody put in chat why? Yeah. So Fran talked about this. Because we do triple equals, not only does it have to be the same, like if we do double equals, JavaScript can interpret that for us. If we do triple equals, it has to also be the same type. This is a string and this is a number. But those are not the same. They are not the same thing. So if we do double equals, it infers that for us and it will actually convert it, right? And just like, the same value. If we do triple equals, it's like, nope, this is of type string and this is of type number. So these are not the same thing. So just want to throw that in there. That's not on your exam, but alas, here we are. Great job for everybody that got 10. Okay, predict outcome number 4. Okay. Here we've got if let message equal dojo. If message equals dojo, then we console log coding plus message, else we console log message plus ninja. So what do we think here? Russell, yep, you guys are crushing it. It'll be coding dojo. Now, notice it doesn't have a space. I can either put the space, there's a couple ways I could do it. Put the space here, and then it will give me a space. I could, in theory, do this. And this would do the same thing. And then there's another way that I think is a little bit more advanced, and I don't think we need to talk about it, where we do string interpolation. But yeah, exactly. It'll say coding dojo. Perfect. Great job, guys. You guys are crushing it. We're already 40% of the way done. Okay. Now, this guy, we got 4, let x equals 9, as long as x is greater than 3. And then we've got x minus equals 3. What are we going to do here? So I got 9. Anybody brave enough to tell me why they got 9? So somebody says 9 and 6. Nine, 6, 3. There's a couple different options here. Yeah, so Russell's got it, right? And I see a couple different people in here. Remember with our for loop. So if you said 9, that's exactly correct. Because we're going to start our for loop where we say let x equals 9 as long as x is greater than 3 or so, and then x minus equals 3. Perfect. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to do this first check, right? Is 9 greater than 3? Well, it is. So we're going to enter into my for loop. And we do console.log x, so we're going to console log 9. Well, remember, similar to how return works for a function, they work a little bit different, but similar to how return works in the fact of once a for loop sees break, once it sees this keyword break, it's done running. The for loop is done running. Doesn't matter if the condition hasn't been met yet. The minute it sees break, it exits the for loop and it's done running. So we're never going to get to 6 because in theory, if I didn't have this break, right, then yes, we would get 9 and 6. We won't get 3 because 3 is not greater than 3. It's equal to, right? But because I have this break, it's just 9 and then the for loop's done running. Why is that? Oh, yeah. So it's just saying that even it's saying like, hey, you're just going to iterate one time. But if I had this, I would get 9 and 6. But this break immediately exits my for loop. Good job, guys. Good catch. Okay. 6 and 7 are a little bit longer, so let's walk through them. And we'll make sure that we T-diagram this baddie. Okay. From here. Okay. So we've got this let message equals unicorn. We've got 4 let x equals 18 greater than message.length plus 4, x minus 1. We've done something similar. So let's come here. X is 18. Unicorn length. So I'm going to say, or I guess I'm going to say message. ML just for message length. We've got 7. There's 7 characters. right? So ML, so message length is 7. You count unicorn, there's 7 total characters. So if we're saying this, 7 plus 4, which is 11, right? As long as X is greater than 11, then we are good to go. So we enter into here, that's 7 plus 4. The message dot length is 7 plus 4. That's how I got that 11. And then we do X minus equals 1. So we get here and we console log. We enter in, is 18 greater than 11? It is. We enter in, we console log 18. 18. Okay, we do X minus equals 1. So now it becomes 17. Is 17 greater than 11? It is. So we console log 17. X minus equals 1 becomes 16. Is 16 greater than 11? It is. Do 16. And we do that all the way. I'm going to do just 3 dots to get all the way to 12, right? And pretend we're going to do that. I mean, it would do the same thing with 15, 16, 7, or sorry, 15, 14, 13. We get to 12. Is 12 greater than? Yes, it is. So we enter in. We do 12. And then we would finally do X to become 11. And then we say, is 11 greater than 11? It's not. So then we enter and we get 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. So somebody asked, or Paul said, do you know specifically the questions they missed? No, it does not. And that is something I've told them is a issue that you guys should be able to know which ones you missed, because it kind of doesn't make sense in my brain, but alas, here we are. Okay. So no, the exam does not let you know which exact question or questions that you missed, unfortunately. Okay. And then Vega, just so you saw, it's 11. I saw that you put X equals 18, X is greater than 10, X minus equals 1. It is 11 because of unicorn is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 plus 4 would be 11. Just want to make sure you saw that. Cool. Great. Any questions on 6? Put a 1 in the chat if we're rocking and rolling. Put a 0 if you need me to go through it again. Okay, great. I think the functions is probably what everybody's wanting me to walk through, but we'll get there. We only got a couple left. Okay. This is probably the most challenging predict the function, so we're going to do this. Get our T diagram. So here we've got let message equal hello world, which we know is 10 characters. We already saw that up there. I mean, if you just count it, it's 10 in there. So we've got to say X equals 0. So we've got a variable declaration, X is 0, right? And we're saying as long as X is less than message dot length, which we said is 10, minus 5. So we got 5, right? 10 minus 5 is 5. So as long as X is less than 5, and then X plus equals 1. Cool. So then we say if, so for this first iteration, we come to this if statement, if message.length equals 7. Well, it doesn't, right? It equals 10. So we're not going to go into this if statement ever, right? Because message.length doesn't change. So we're never going to enter this. So we say, okay, else let I equal message length. So now we have a new variable called I. And it is message length, so it's 10. I'm just going to do a few iterations of this so we don't, we'll kind of do it last, like a speed version of that too. So we got 10. And then now remember, when we see a for loop, we have to run this code until it's totally done, and then X can change. This is what we call a nested for loop. So we've got this guy. We've got let I equal message length, which we said was 10. The condition is 10 minus 3, which is 7, as long as it's greater than 7. Perfect. And then we have I minus equals 3. So, okay, great. So we enter into this first for loop, right? And we say, is 10 greater than 7? It is. So we're going to console log 10. Now, I minus equals 3, 10 becomes 7. Is I greater than, I greater than 7? Well, it's not, right? Because it is 7, right? 7 is not greater, it's equal to. So then it exits this for loop. Now, once it exits the for loop, we're not done there yet. Because now all it does is it comes up here. Oops, sorry. Comes up here, and then it runs this guy. So now x equals 1. So then it's going to come back, and it's going to say, is message.length equals 7? Well, it's not, right? It's never going to change. So then we're going to come here, and then we're going to say, okay, for let I equal message.length. Now, whenever we're dealing with a nested for loop, remember, we are redeclaring the value. So it doesn't remember the last value when it broke it. We're redeclaring it as 10. So here is I greater than 7. It is, because it's 10. So let's go ahead and console log it. We get 10. We do -3, 7. Breaks my function, or breaks my for loop, right? Because 7 is not greater than 7. It's equal to. It comes up here, runs this guy. X becomes 2. Is 2 less than 5? It is, and it will do that until it gets all the way up to 5, right? And so it's just going to do 10. And then it's going to come up here. This is going to become 3. So we'll console log 10 again. 4. Console log 10 again. And then 5. And then it's going to say, is that equal, or is that less than 5? Well, no, it's not, because they're equal to. So we're just going to get 5 from 0 to 4, basically. When x was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where we get 5, 10. So somebody said it's 5 tens. Okay, 0. Robert, can you explain what maybe doesn't make sense? And I can walk through that again. And Lucas, it would be 5, because remember we start at 0. So we're the iteration of 0. It's going to go down to that if statement, and we're going to print the first 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we get the 5.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, you just answered it for me. I was thinking 1, 2, 3, and then we don't do
Yeah.
5. So it's 0 as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Robert, if you could be a little bit more specific. So instead of just walking through the entire process, what exactly isn't connecting? I'll walk through maybe the first two. Okay, so I'll walk through the first two again, and then we can kind of make sure that we're moving forward. And if we need to talk offline, we can. Okay. So at the very beginning, we've got this message, and message length is 10 because there's 10 characters in hello world, right? So 10 minus 5 is 5. So that's our first condition. And we have x equals 0. Equals 0 is my var and val. Perfect. What it's going to say is message.length equal to 7. Well, it's not, right? Because message.length is 10. 10 characters, and that never changes. So then we never go into this if statement. We're always going to go to this else. So we're going to say, okay, great. I equals message.length, which is 10. So we have this new variable of I that's equal to 10. Its condition is as long as I is greater than message.length minus 3, which is 7. 10 minus 3 is 7, right? As long as it's greater than that, then we'll stay within this second for loop. And remember, the second for loop runs until it exits, and then we come up to this first for loop. So it checks the first one. Is I, which is 10, greater than 7? Well, it is, right? Because it's 10. So then it comes in here and it console logs 10. Great. Now it comes up here and it does I minus equals 3. So 10 minus equals 3, which is the same thing as saying I is equal to 10 minus 3, which is 7. So then we come up here, 7. And then we say, is 7 greater than 7? Well, it's not, right? If it said greater than or equal to, then sure, that would be fine. But it doesn't say that, so it's just greater than. So because that is not done, this for loop, or because this condition now has been met, this for loop is done running. But we're still within a for loop. This is what we call a nested for loop. So we got to make sure that this one now runs until it's done. So then by doing that, x equals x plus 1, so x becomes 1. So now it's going to say is x, which is 1, less than 5. It is. Great. So then we enter in, and it's going to say, great, if message.length is equal to, if message.length is equal to 7, well, that's never going to change, right? It's never going to be 7 because hello world always going to have 10 characters in there. So don't enter that. So we enter into this else. Now, this is maybe where some of the confusion comes from. This second for loop, this is a declaration, right? And so this is declaring the for loop. So I'm declaring the value for I. So I'm kind of, it doesn't remember. Once this for loop breaks, it doesn't remember that it had an I, because the for loop's done running, it forgets about it, right? And so I'm saying, hey, wait, no, I need you to create a variable called I, and I'm gonna set it equal to message length, which is 10. Great, so this is like a declaration of I. And then we've got 7 here. So then we do the same thing again, right? And we say, okay, is 10 greater than 7? It is. We enter in, we console log 10. Then we do -3. It's now 7. And we say, is 7 greater than 7? Well, it's not. So then that's done. It forgets about I. I no longer exists, right? Because the for loop's done. So maybe it'd be helpful if I went like this. So now it comes up to the top and it says, hey, x plus equals 1. Okay, x now is 2. Enters in, is message.length equal to 7? No, it's not. Cool, let's come here. Oh, we have this new variable of I. Okay, cool, it's equal to 10. And then we just keep doing that all the way until x becomes 5, right? Dot, 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 to 5. Once x becomes 5, 5 is not less than 5, and then we're good to go, right? And then it exits. But that would give us, well, x is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? All of those are less than 5. And so if we're saying for each time, we're just console logging 10, we would have 10, 10, 10, 10, and 10. So that's what's happening with each iteration. These are kind of connected. That makes sense. Does that answer your question, Robert? Is that kind of? So somebody asked, each loop runs until it's stopped by itself. Absolutely, that's a great call out. Each run, every time we enter a for loop, we can't do anything else until it's done. Either it meets a break or it's just the condition's been met and we're done running it. Okay. Any other questions? This is the most confusing. So if this didn't initially make sense to you, that's a-okay. Any other questions on this guy? Just put a 1. Yeah, perfect. Unless you already put 1s. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. So now we've got 3 of the actual functions that we're going to run. So I'm going to build these and we'll see what we can do, right? Okay. So this is, I've changed the numbers, but this is just the prompt from the exam. And so it says create a function, which we just learned how to do, that returns all odd numbers from 12 to 30. Now, this isn't a great explanation. And what it should say, it returns the sum. Let's do this. Returns, we'll do part A, and then B is, basically, let's do this. Returns the sum of, okay. So we're just gonna first deal with create a function that returns all odd numbers from 12 to 30, right? And so if I wanted to do this, what I could do is, yes, Robert, exactly. I could put in within my function, I could have a start and a end. Great idea. Great idea. So what I could do is, if I'm saying I want to create a function that returns all odd numbers from 12 to 300, let's do 30, because 300 a lot. Cool. What I could do is I say, okay, great. I have some parameters. Where do I want to start? Where do I want to end? And so I would have some function, right? So I could say for let I equal start. I is less than or equal to end. I plus plus. Right, so this is me iterating through. I don't know if it's going to start on an odd or an even, so I just want to do I plus plus to make sure it is fully iterating through. Now we want to make sure we're doing odds, and I showed you guys a tool of how we could do that. Does anybody remember what that tool was, what we called it and what we used it? Yeah, it's the percent sign. Anybody name? Oh yeah, the modulo. Great job. So what I can say is, there's a couple ways I could do this. If I'm wanting to keep track of, let's say I wanted to turn an array of all odd numbers. What I could do is I could say let odd numbers equals an empty array. And then all I have to do is I say if. And I say I modulo 2 equals 1. Meaning it's odd, right? The remainder of I modulo 2 is 1. Then I say odd numbers dot push I. And then the last thing is in reading this, it says returns all odd numbers. So I make sure that I'm out of my for loop, but still within my function. That's where the colors really comes in handy, right? So my function starts with this orange bracket, or I think it's orange. I'm like partly colorblind, so if it's another color, I'm sorry. Genuinely, I can't see colors very well. So this color, but as long as I'm not within this purple, right? This purple isn't my for loop. I want to be outside my for loop for this. I return odd numbers, and this will give me an array of my odd numbers. So I start out with an empty array. I say, hey, I want to iterate through from whenever the person, I'm expecting them to pass in a value of 12 or 30 or whatever we want it to be. We just want 2 numbers, find me all the odd numbers. We can do that. We're going to iterate through that. Then we say if I modulo 2, now reminder that modulo just gives you the remainder. So this will go in, so this number on the right will go into the number on the left, and then modulo just gives you the remainder. And we knew that the secret is, if we do modulo 2, it's either going to give us a 0, meaning it went in evenly, there's no remainder, which tells us it's an even number, or it's going to give us a 1. And if it gives us a 1, it tells us it's an odd number. So we're saying, hey, if the remainder of 2 going into it is 1, then let's go ahead and push or add it to this array. So I'm just going to have this array of odd numbers. Once my for loop is done, but I'm still within my function, I return that array, and now I give it and say, okay, here is all of my odd numbers. Yeah, Robert, great idea. So let's even test it. So I can say console.log sum odd. It's kind of a weird name for it. 12, 30. And what this will do is this will, remember, because I'm returning, I don't see it. That's why I have to console log. And what it will do is it will run this function, and whatever is returned that value, that's what I'm console logging. So it's going to be this array of odd numbers. If I come here, I run this. I get 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 29. Great. That's all the odd numbers in between. Any questions on that, on what I just did? Kind of just went for it, but any questions on that? Or is this making sense? Makes sense. Great. Now the same sort of idea could happen where maybe I just wanted to, so that's the first part. And then remember, I wanted to do a second part because I think this is what they're really asking, where I want to, so somebody said, can you just ignore to put console log. If I did console log, it will run my function. So yeah, whenever you're actually doing it, it'll run my function. So if your function already has like a return something in there, then you don't have to worry about the console log. You can just forget about it. So on the exam, like where it has the return count, then you're good. You don't need to console log it. The system itself is going to take whatever's being returned, and then it's going to verify is what's being returned, what's supposed to be returned. And so you're good to go. So you don't even need to console log it. I just needed to do that to actually call the function and show you guys that it worked. But yeah, when you're on the exam, all you'd have to do is this code right here. And that's right here, just technically, because the return was already there. Okay, so the other thing is, I think it wanted you to give, based off the function name, sum odd, wants to give you the sum of all the odd numbers. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna say start, end, and do the same thing, right? So I am going to, it had var, I'm gonna say let sum equals 0, right? Because we're gonna start at the end, and then I'm gonna have return sum. This is kind of what, and then it says something like your code here, something like that, right? So if we have the sum, it kind of acts the same way, right? Same logic is happening. So I can say for I equals start. Now, if they give you numbers for the exam, you don't have to put in the parameter. So if they say like 12 to 300, just do start at equals 12. So we're going to do it the way that I would say the exam is probably going to work. So instead of start, I'm actually just not even going to have that. If the exam doesn't have it, I don't want you to like try to go in and fix it and then get it wrong and be like, why is it not working? So we're going to do it exactly how the exam. If we're doing from 12 to 30, I'm just going to do 12 to 30. Then I'm going to say I equals 12. You're just going to hard code it. Is that the best? No, but if you were to dynamically do it, the comparison, sort of the way that the algorithm's set up, it's not going to, or the algorithm app is set up, it's going to compare the two and it's going to say that you got it wrong, even though you got it right. So we're going to do it this way. We're going to say is I is less than or equal to 30. Because if it says, you know, the numbers between 12 and 30, you want to make sure you're including that, right? Or we could have just said less than 31, either one, and then I plus plus. Cool. And then all we're doing is we're going to say if, same sort of idea, I modulo 2 equals 1. Then we just, anybody have an idea? What could I do? What if I did sum, not sum plus plus? So sum plus plus is just going to add 1, right? So sum would become 1. But yeah, I'm seeing a lot in here. So I could do sum equals sum plus I, or I could just do sum plus equals I. Either one works. So not 1, this is a real big thing. We don't want to just increase 1. I want to sum all the odd numbers, not just how many we have, but I want to sum all the odd numbers. So it's I. We want that specific number. Cool. Yeah, I saw 1 a couple times, so I want to make sure. Great. And so this is just going to return the sum of all the odd numbers between this. So if I run this, oh, I didn't call my function. So I could console.log, and I have to console log it if I'm going to see it again. You don't need to do that. You just, all you have to do is this right here, hard code, that's done. But I just need to sum odd. And if I want to run it, I come here, 189, which I'm assuming is correct. Cool. Any questions on that? We got 2 more. I think we can do them in the next 15 minutes. So somebody said, if we console log, will the answer be incorrect? Well, what it's going to check is whatever's being returned. So if you console logged internally, it's not really going to do anything for you, but you need to make sure you have the return. but you won't see like on the actual exam, even if you console logged, you're not going to see the console. So you don't need to console log on the exam. If you're doing it yourself, that's fine. You can do that. But this is the code you want to put to the exam. Hard code it and make sure you're returning the value. So sum is just, somebody said they don't understand sum. All sum is a variable that we're using to keep track of. If I wanted to add up all the odd numbers between 12 and 30, then I need to hold that value. I need to keep track of that somehow. So we have to do our variable there. Now, one thing to note is I can't do sum equals 0 in here. Anybody know why? Why can't I do that? Think about our nested for loop. What happened with I each time we went through? Not increase. Remember yeah, Gary, it got reset, right? Every time I do a for loop, I would do this, right? So this would work. My first iteration, sum would become sum plus I. But then once I checked the iteration, I say is 13 less than or equal to 30? It is. I'm redefining sum and I got rid of what I just had. So it's constantly redoing itself. So really all you would get is the last, like if well, we can try it too, but all you can get, well, we're not gonna try it, but all you would get is the last value because you just keep resetting it to 0 and then you're saying 0 plus whatever that odd number is. And so here, sum has to be outside of your for loop. You have to declare it outside of the for loop and then bring that in. And you say sum plus equals I. So if it's odd, then we are saying sum plus equals I, which is the same thing as saying, hey, now my sum is whatever I used to have, plus my new number that I've identified is odd. That's what the sum equals sum plus I. Cool. Hopefully that helped a little bit. Did that help? Yeah. So Caroline, it's not 1. That's the big thing. We're wanting the numbers we're wanting to sum all of the numbers that are odd. So if I just say 1, it's going to, like if I were to run this, it's not going to show anything, but up here, it's got the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I just did 1, what it would return to me is the number 9, right? Because it's going to say sum equals sum plus 1. Sum would start at 0. And if I was just doing plus 1, then now sum, instead of being 13, would just be 1. And then the next time it finds an odd number, sum would just become 2. But instead, I want 13 plus 15 plus 17 plus 19 plus 21. So that's the difference between 1 and I here. Did that make sense? Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I'm just summing up all the odd numbers. Cool. Okay, let's continue so we get the next 2 knocked out in the next 10 minutes. Okay, so this one's a little bit more challenging, but that's why I'm here. Okay, so it says create a function that will return the difference between the largest and the smallest values present in the array. So here I've got this array, and I've got this smallest and largest. Now, and then your code here. Great. And then what I'm returning is the smallest minus, or largest minus smallest, which is just the difference, right? Here's my array that I'm going to need to iterate through. You might notice array of 0 is smallest array of, for smallest and largest, we're both setting them to 0. Now, here, and this is really important where students always get confused. What students always want to do is do something like this. They just want to do this. Now, what happens if this happened? 0 is greater than all of these numbers. Well, except for 7. 0 is greater than all of those, right? So it's not an accurate representation. My smallest number is not 0. In fact, it's negative 29. Or the same thing with largest, I guess it'd make a little bit more sense. If I said 0, if I did this, nothing is larger than 0. So if I wanted, what is my largest number? What's going to return to me is 0. That's not the case. 0 is not in here. In fact, my largest number is -3, right? So that's where this array of 0 comes from, is, and it's a really common trick. It's just say, hey, let's just start here. Let's just start here, because we're saying, at least we know we're in here, and then we can compare from there. That's it. We're just going to do a comparison with each value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 4, and I'm going to say let I equals. Now, do I need to say I equals 0 here? What do you guys think? We always say I equals 0. Do I need to say I equals 0 here? So wrong, you said 1. Yeah, why can we start at 1? Anybody have an idea? Depends on what you're trying to achieve, but specifically for this, yes, Corey, because all I'm doing throughout this for loop is I need to compare and say, hey, is the number that we're looking at smaller than my smallest or larger than my largest? And if it is, then I need to change those values, right? Well, if I did 0, I'm going to say, hey, is -13 larger or smaller than -13? Or is it larger than -13? It doesn't make sense, right? It's just an extra step that we don't need to do. So I can start it at 1 here. I don't need to compare array of 0 to array of 0 and say, are these different? No, because they're the same thing, right? So then here I've got I is less than array.length, right? I want to go through the entire thing, and then I'm going to say I plus plus. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an if statement. I'm going to say if I, so I is 1. So I'm going to say if array of I is less than smallest, then what do I want to do? If it's less than smallest, if it's smaller than my smallest, what do you guys think I want to do here? Exactly, Corey. I'm going to say smallest equals array of I. Okay, give me that new number. Perfect. Else if, now anybody know why I did else if instead of else? And I said, well, I need my condition, sorry. Else if, I'm not going to add an else later, but we'll talk about it. Here, if I say array of I is greater than largest, then I'm going to say largest equals array of I. Perfect. So the reason I did an else if is if I can think about this. I could have 2 if statements, right? Where I just say, hey, if it's smaller than the smallest, then go ahead and change it. And then also I have another if and say if it's greater than the largest. But if it is smaller, is it ever going to be larger? If my number, if this is true, array of I is smaller than smallest, and I know that largest is set to smallest currently. If this is true, it's okay if it exits, right? Because it's never going to be smaller than smallest and also larger. Doesn't work, right? So what I can do is I can say, hey, if this is smaller than smallest, no, that's not the case. Okay, well, let's check if it's larger than my largest, because they're both set to the same thing. And so by doing this, I'm not doing another check. Like if I were to do this, this would work, right? But do I need to check if it's larger than my largest if this is true? I don't, right? If it is smaller than my smallest and becomes my new smallest, well, then I don't even need to check to see if it's my largest because it never will be, because largest already equals, negative 13. Yeah, exactly, Corey. So I'm not doing another useless if check because that condition's never going to be true. It is never going to be larger and smaller at the same time. So it's just a way that I can make a little bit more efficient code. Again, if you used multiple ifs, would it work? Absolutely. It would work just fine. But this is just a little bit more efficient. So it's going to iterate through all of these. It's going to get me my largest and my smallest. And then once the for loop is done, I return the difference. So somebody said, what about if and then just else? So else would say that it is larger, right, than my largest. So if I just did an else, and if I have an else, let me just cut this real fast. If I do this, think about it. I'm saying, okay, we start at negative 13. And we go for the first one, right? We're iterating on one and we're saying, hey, if negative 15 is smaller than negative 13, okay, that's true. That works right. My smallest is good at exit. Then we go to 8 and we say, is that negative? It's not, or sorry, is that smaller? It's not. Then we come here and then, yeah, so that case would work. But what happens when we get to here? And negative 3 is not smaller than my smallest. And we're saying if this condition is true, is negative 3 smaller than negative 29? It's not, right? And so here we're saying, okay, great. Then it must be my largest. And we're redefining largest. And this would work for negative 3. But the second we get to negative 4, is it's going to say, is negative 4 smaller than my smallest? Well, it's not. So then if we use an else, then we're saying, well, there must be my largest. But technically my largest is negative 3, right? And so by doing this else, we kind of handcuff ourselves into not actually finding our largest. So that's where the else if comes in. And we can do this guy and just have another check, if that makes sense. Lucas, I hope that makes a little bit of sense.
So if I understand it correctly, by putting else if, because if you just put else, if it's correct, it's just going to keep on replacing it instead of comparing it to the one that's actually the smallest.
Yeah,
That's the
well, it's
difference,
not
right?
comparing to the actual largest. It's not the largest, right? So like I said, if we got all the way here, like in theory, that else would work. But else is just any other condition. So as long as if it's not the smallest, then we're changing it to my largest. But right here, when we get to negative 4 is not my smallest. So we're going to automatically jump in and change it to my largest. But actually, negative 3 is larger than negative 4. So we're not doing that comparison. We're just saying, okay, well, if you're not the smallest, then you have to be my largest. But let's say that, this was the end of my code actually here. Well, if we did it that way, what would end up happening is it would check and say, is negative 15, let's say we iterated through and right now my current smallest is negative 29. It would say, is negative 15 smaller than negative 29? It's not. And if we just had our else, we'd say, then it must be my largest. It's like, well, it's not, right? We have negative 3, we have negative 4, negative 9, negative 10, negative 13, negative 7. All of these are larger than negative 15. But if we just have our else, then that's kind of what we're handcuffing ourselves to.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand it. Instead
Cool.
of just comparing it to the previous one in the array, else if compares it to all of the previous ones in the array to make sure that it is either the smallest one or the largest one.
So let me clarify. It's not the else if. The else if allows us to do another comparison. It's just the fact, it's more of the fact that the else handcuffs us to any other situation. Then it's not the smallest, right? So it could be the medium size. But if we just use else, it's going to catch medium, it's going to catch, anything and change my largest. So what the else if allows us to do is say, hey, okay, so it's not the smallest, but is it my largest? And if it's not, then okay, that condition's not true and it doesn't change my largest. I still keep. So like when we get to -4 with this, it's going to say is -4 smallest? Nope, -29 is currently my smallest. Okay, great. Was -4 my lowest or my largest? We're going to say, nope, that's not true either because -3 is currently my largest and -4 is not larger than -3. And we're going to say, oh, okay, no worries. Then we just move forward and we keep going with the iteration. But like Paul said in the chat, else is a catch-all. And it's like, it's either this or it's that. We don't really, it's not either smallest or largest. It is it our smallest? If not, well, is it our largest?
I understand. Thank you.
Absolutely. So somebody said if and else if requires a condition, but else does not yet, because else is just catch all. Anything else, right? Okay, we're a little bit over time, so I'm going to go over real fast this last one. I'm just going to do it and then we'll talk through it. Create a function that will return a count of how many values are less than X. This is fairly simple, fairly straightforward, right? Where I've got X equals 9, I've got a count, and then somebody already did this in the chat, so we can kind of iterate through that. Or we can kind of take that same ideology back when we had sum. Okay, so let's do our code here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a for loop for let I equal 0. I is less than array dot length I plus plus because I want to iterate through the whole thing. And then all I'm going to do, why is this? Weird. I'm not sure why it's blue like that. Okay. And then all we're going to do is we're going to iterate through, right? And we're going to say, cool, if array of I is less than X, well, then I want to say count plus plus. I'm not sure why I'm getting curly boys. Remove this commented out code. I have no idea what commented out code it's talking about. Okay. Oh, you guys are saints. Thank you. There we go. What a time to be alive. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're iterating through this array. And we're just basically saying, hey, if the position, so if 5 is less than X, then I want to, all we're doing is returning a count of how many values are less than. It's not returning the, it's not returning the total sum of that. It's just how many of them are less than that. And so all we're doing is we're checking and saying, hey, is this less than X? 5 less than X? Okay, it is. Let's just add 1 to count. Is 7 less than X? Yes, it is. Add 1 to count. 23 less than X? No, it's not. Okay, don't worry about it. No, it's not. Yes, it is. And then so then we should get 5, right? So all we're doing is iterating through if this condition is true, if X is less, or sorry, if the value is less than X, then we just add 1 to count. That's all. This one's fairly straightforward. This one's probably the hardest. This one's fairly straightforward. Are there any questions on this count less than X?
After going through the previous one, no.
Yeah, right. Previous one's the hardest for sure. And again, why would I not want to put count within my for loop? Why wouldn't I want to put a variable within my for loop? Yeah, because it won't update. It'll keep overriding itself. Yeah, it gets reset. Great job, guys. Okay. I know we're a little bit over time, but I hope that this was helpful. Did this help you guys at all? Is this like helpful to the exam? Okay, great. Are there any questions? Yeah, go take the exam, especially while it's fresh in your brain. I'll get this up. I've got something tonight, but I'll get this up as soon as I can. I'll get it up by the end of the day, like end of the day, but it won't be up really immediately. Are there any questions I can answer real fast? So Jacob, I talked all about why we would, so it's in the video of why we set this to 0 compared to setting it to 0. And then it's because we set this to 1 because we don't need to re-compare the two. Yeah, and if you need a second code, then feel free to message Paul on Discord and he can get that to you. So there's no need to compare. Like if I set this equal to 0 and we're doing a comparison, array of 0, if that is less than smallest, but smallest is already array of 0. So I don't need to re-compare that, right? I can just say, oh, I need to start here because I know that both of them are set here. And then because I'm iterating through, I just know that it'll get worked out. And I don't want to set this to 0 because just like this, what if these are all less than 0? Right, if I just set this to 0, or really this one, if I set this to 0, well, nothing is ever going to be larger, but that's not really giving me the largest value in my array because 0 is not in my array. But none of these are larger than 0, so they'll never get overwritten as largest. That's why we set it to array of 0. Somebody asked, could we set it to an empty array? You cannot. No, that would be basically just creating a new array. But you can't just set it to empty array. Cool. Any other questions, friends?
Make sure you'll enter that code to take the exam. I don't think it's counting.
Yes.
If you need
Make
instructions
sure
for that, check the pin in our cohort channel, or check the pins.
Yep.
It's at the very top of the pins.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, make sure you use that. And the second code is on Discord. Good luck to everybody. Again, tomorrow's office hour will simply be us just being in here. And if you have an issue with the exam, we'll be here to answer it. We can't answer any questions on the exam, but we will just be in here if you need help. And if you don't need help, then, you know, we'll be here. And if you do want to talk other stuff, like we'll be here. You know, it's really just a time for people to do the exam. We can hop in a breakout room and help. So, great. I'll stop the recording here.